MaximumFun.org.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Jesse Thorne, everybody. All right, well, good morning. Good early afternoon. I imagine some people are still sleeping in, which is what I would be doing if my talk had been scheduled after 4 p.m. I tried to tell Jesse, look, my normal schedule, I stay up till 8 a.m., I sleep from 8 until 3:30, and then if you wake me up then, I'll pop down for a 4 p.m. talk. He said, look, we're going to do an 11 a.m. talk. Can you handle it? I said, I can jive. So that's just a taste of the humor you're going to get today from me. I'm not really a comedian or a humorist per se. I'm someone who likes to laugh. And I would imagine most of you folks here are people that like to laugh. And that's what I'm here. I'm here in the spirit of joy and fun and good humor and good-naturedness. Hey, hold on a second. Normally, I don't prepare for lectures and speeches, but last night when I was watching John do an incredible ukulele performance and Jesse do the introduction of the whole event, I thought they clearly have prepared. They've probably been working on that for between 4 to 6 months, and maybe this is not one of those events where you can just sort of wing it, and I wanted to prepare something just to bring out here, so I made some notes here. I've seen people do this before. And I have different stories to talk about. I'm not really, I'd like to consider myself an entertainer, but I've never really thought of myself as being very funny. If you laugh, if you giggle, that's fine. I'll take it as a compliment, but you don't have to laugh because what we're going to be talking about today is not necessarily funny. It's a story about a young boy. And I went to school with him. And I had a lot of dreams about him last night. And I woke up this morning aware that I was going to be doing some speaking. I figured I might as well speak about him. His name is Bobby Penelope. It's an unusual name for anyone. But this was a young man who was considered a nerd or a geek by many of my friends and classmates in elementary school. And Jesse, on the drive up here, had explained to me that this is a convention that attracts a lot of people that have been called or referred to as nerds or geeks. Now, that made me think, oh, that's like Bobby Penelope, because it immediately took me back to elementary school. This was the first time I ever met anybody who was really considered a geek or a nerd. And he was a nice kid, beautiful blonde hair, just nice big blue eyes, just like saucer eyes, just round as can be, and a round face, kind of like a moon face, but very fair skin. He wore largely Lacoste polo shirts and just sort of sometimes jeans or sweatpants, just to give you an idea of what he looked like. He was about yay tall. Now, this was about 5th grade, I think, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I grew up, and Bobby Penelope rode the bus with me. Actually, last night I noticed during the introduction, the welcoming ceremony, that when Jesse spoke and said things with the letter P, that it kind of popped on the mic. So I'm going to try to move off when I say Bobby Penelope. P. So I do apologize for the P-pops there. Bobby Penelope. Thank you. He rode the bus with us, and the story I wanted to talk about to see if anybody here could relate to was when you can't get a seat on the bus. Okay, now how many people here took the school bus, all right? Who took the school bus here in the morning, right? Yeah, some people took the school bus in the morning. I was one of those folks, and many times I missed it. But when I did make it, it was always interesting to see what happened when we came to Bobby Penelope's house. He lived around a corner, a very particular corner. It was the only stop in that realm of the neighborhood, but we did pick him up every day, and he had a very hard time finding a seat. Now, if anybody here ever experienced that, just say, I. Okay, now what was that all about? What is that? You could fit 2 people at least, maybe 3 people in each one of those seats. The Naga hide, brown leather, maybe sometimes green leather. In a beautiful bluebird school bus, right, painted yellow. Jesse and I saw a vintage school bus on our drive over. Beautiful. In LA, they have older school buses. The weather facilitates that. In Michigan, you got to keep it pretty current. So we had always a nice new school bus thanks to the weather there. And Bobby Penelope came on, and he just could not get a seat. It really... I mean, this kid, he started at the first row. He said, "Excuse me, may I please sit here?" The person says, "No." So he would move on to the next one. "May I please sit in the seat?" "No." Then he would move on to the next one. Now, every now and then there was a seat with 2 people, maybe 3 people, but the majority of the seats were taken up by one person and their bag. You know, maybe a lunchbox, the backpack, some extra books. The fact is, nobody wanted him to sit by him. There was no real reason for it, except that I guess you had to humiliate somebody, and this kid, I think it was because of those saucer blue eyes. He just... sort of a itchy area here. And he finally, eventually... brought his mother up on the bus. And his mom would sort of ask after he asked. So he'd say, "May I please sit here?" They'd say, "No." The mom would say, "May Bobby please sit here?" They say, "No." So she would move on. And I could see that was the whole problem. The mom took no for an answer too. And he learned all this from her. So they made their way and eventually got to the last seat on the bus, and he wasn't allowed to sit there either. So he sort of stood near the emergency exit where there was a handle. It was very sad. He did cry on a daily basis. But what was interesting is I found that when he cried, I laughed. And that began a lifelong pleasure at other people's misfortune. It's not something I'm proud of. The Germans do have a word for it. You guys already, it's not even a point. And that's just it's when you're able to take joy in life's, I guess, downturns, as long as they're not happening to you. And that's something I've found to be really funny. When someone falls, I mean, that's a basic example of that. I don't know why. It's just something that's always appealed to me. I have another example of that. There was a young man pardon me. There was a young man in my 5th grade class named Emra, and he was assigned, as we all were, a special project where you had to write a poem about an old etching. We found a bunch of old public domain etchings through some kind of school project. We had to pick one and write a story about it. The picture he picked featured some dogs, some hunting dogs perhaps, and a master, and some landscape behind them, some shrubbery and whatnot. And he decided to write a poem that went, "Hounds on a leash, hounds on a leash, mistaken for eating a midnight quiche." Now, this poem did not go over well. This poem did not go over well, but clearly that was a masterpiece because I've remembered it to this very day, all these years later. The teacher that was teaching this class was so outraged by this poem that she actually manhandled this student. Now, I'm almost 31 years old now. I'll be 31 tomorrow. Thank you. I learned a few things, actually. I just want to, as a side note, you don't have to do anything funny to get people to laugh. You just kind of stand around and play with your pants or just make an awkward expression. People will giggle because there's so much tension. There's so much awkwardness and embarrassment and just humiliation going on that everyone here is really funny. I mean, it's easy. It's easy for me. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know exactly why Jesse invited me. I don't know how I fit into this whole thing, but I do feel privileged. I do feel very thankful to be here. And anyway, this teacher, she used to just beat down on this kid. Now, he had some problems that these days they would call learning disabilities or disadvantages. He was a great kid, but he did have some unusual quirks, and those quirks really manifested and showed themselves during this this special writing assignment where he wrote dogs on a leash, hounds on a leash, mistaken for eating a midnight quiche. Now, the teacher came down on him so hard, and she made an example of him in front of the whole class. And the real sad note of this story is that he didn't even write that poem. He actually had his mom write it. And the next day, after we turned them in, the teacher forced the mom to come in, stand in front of the class, read the poem. She was humiliated. The kids were all laughing and caterwauling or whatever they do. The holler hawks. People were crying out and yelling at this woman. This is a grown woman. This is not just some kid. And she broke down, of course. She started crying. The kids started crying. The teacher crying. The teacher was getting a divorce at the time from a husband who was dying. And I think back and I think, did this really happen? I mean, I can't, how many people here think back to their childhood and think, did that actually happen, or is that just some kind of dream? Now, raise your hand if that's happened to you. Okay. That's solidarity. That makes me feel better. Because I think back and I think there's no way these things actually took place. There's no way that this woman, my teacher, beat this kid in front of all of us. But yet she did. She started with his eyes. And that makes sense. As I said, I don't normally prepare things for lectures like this. Now I see why. I made some notes last night, and I see now that they're... Anyway, she started with his eyes. His eyes were watery from having cried. She put a thumb in each corner, like this, but imagine my hands are reversed, so I guess more like this. And she kind of dug in. Now, keep in mind, this is a kid who already had some disadvantages, okay? He came from a very wealthy family, so it's nothing like that. He had the finest 600 thread count sheets. He had... At that time, he had the, I guess it was just Nintendo. I mean, he did upgrade to Genesis while I knew him. So that was a big deal. That was 16-bit. The 8-bit systems worked very well for him as well. I mean, he was a privileged child. He was. But when it came to learning and education, he had some disadvantages, and my teacher took advantage of that. I mean, she was going through so much with the divorce, with her husband who was divorcing her, dying. I mean, imagine, you've been with this person your whole life. They're dying. You cared for them. And as they're dying, their dying wish is to divorce you. I mean, that's very dark. So she was all worked up, obviously. She took it out on this kid with the mom standing right there. I mean, she dug her thumbs into this kid's eyes, okay? Right like this, okay? You see that first trickle of blood, that first little piece of blood. No, it's dark. I'm not a humorist, okay? I wanted to tell you, here's what I can do. You tell this story as though it was your own. You can take this story, you can say, hey, you got a crazy story? Here, there's my high school experience or my middle school experience. You can put it in really any age group as long as you're in a school setting, even college. This will work. It's just, I want to offer you something. You paid a lot of money to be here, and I have a talk to give. Anyway, so she's digging her thumbs in. The kid's screaming. The mom's like, what are you doing? The mom starts to run over and grapple with the teacher. Big mistake. Because the first thing the teacher does, she grabs that eraser board, right? We got the dry erase marker. Now, the thing that a lot of people are maybe familiar with, that dust, that dry erase marker dust is toxic, okay? If you clap one of those erasers, you clap. If you clap it with chalk, that's just going to make a big bunch of a calcium mess, right? A bunch of calcium flying around. But if you clap that eraser with a dry marker, that's going to cause toxic materials to be released into the air. And sure enough, she started clapping, okay? She started clapping. The kids got wise. They ran up. They started clapping. Okay, this didn't happen. Moving on. I did see a child psychologist around the same time. I'll talk about that a little bit. This is funny. Now, this is funny. I got in a lot of trouble for mail fraud as a young man. Mail fraud. There was also some just arson, general arson, or forgery, issues that involve me raising hell. Now, you always hear about young kids raising hell. I mean, I used to think about like TPing trees or putting a firecracker in somebody's mailbox. That's all very blue collar. I was much more interested in white collar delinquency. And that involved more kind of, I guess, painful problems. I was involved in a baseball card scam where Dover reprints, Dover Publishing. Anybody heard of Dover? Dover. They make great collections of clip art that you can use. This is the old days when you had to still cut stuff out and paste it down, or there wasn't no scanners back then. Or if you did have to go get something scanned, it was a drum scanner. It would cost about $5,000. And I was fortunate enough to get my hands on some of these Dover reprint series. And not only did I enjoy the clip art, I enjoyed these baseball card series they put out. They published reprints of the most valuable baseball cards. We got the Honus Wagner rookie card. Okay, that's the most valuable baseball card of all time. Now, Wayne Gretzky at one point had purchased this, I think, for somewhere between $20,000 and $5 million, somewhere between there. Because I'm not exactly sure what the price was. Anyway, he kept a hold of it for a few years. Then he sold it. I mean, this is the one and only card. I made a reprint of that and figured I would go and sell it to a local baseball card shop. If you age these reprints with tea, coffee, soil, and diarrhea, you can actually recreate the aging process that most baseball cards experience naturally. Now, the diarrhea aspect is a touchy subject, to say the least, but the truth is when people are carbon dating things, they look for fecal bacteria because that is what builds up over time the most naturally. Again, I'm not someone here to make you laugh. I'm here to impart knowledge and wisdom and share some facts with you. If you're going to try to fake an old card, you want to put some waste product on there, preferably waste that came from a human body. So anyway, we did all that, and we got the card aged just right, smelled right, looked right, had the dog-eared edges and all that, a little brown stain, whatnot. And we took that into the local antique store, and they sold old toys, they sold old comics, they sold old games, and they sold old baseball cards. We offered this man the Honus Wagner rookie, some old Cracker Jack rookie cards, some triple folders by Hassan, some Babe Ruth old Topps bubblegum first series, a whole bunch of stuff. I never was interested in baseball until I found these Dover reprints, and then I got really excited. And he gave us $250 for approximately $250,000 worth of cards. Now the question that arose at that moment was, does this guy realize these are fake cards, or is he trying to rip us off? Because we sold him $250,000 worth of cards for $250. The question is he trying to teach us a lesson, or is he trying to get a good deal? We never actually figured it out. I got caught. And I got in a lot of trouble, and that's when I was sent to the child psychologist. The child psychologist decided that I had some problems and would need a few different lessons, a few meetings to discuss them. So I went and saw him several times. This was age 13. I was not allowed to hang out with my other friends anymore because their parents thought I would be a bad influence, and spent most of my time in the offices of this child psychologist. He was a man who hailed from India. He was very well dressed, very distinguished, had a kind face. And he would say, "Hello, Andrew, how are you? Welcome today, have a seat. Now, why are you here?" And I say, "You know why I'm here. I'm here for the same reason I was here last week. My parents wanted me to come here." He said, "Why do you think they want you to come here?" I said, "I don't know, because I've been getting into some trouble." He said, "Why do you think you've been getting into some trouble?" I said, I was trying to sell counterfeit baseball cards." "Why are you trying to sell counterfeit baseball cards?" "Because I wanted to have some fun." "Why do you want to have some fun?" "Because I wanted to come here and see you." And that always got him. That always got him. That got him because he realized that I knew what he was onto, okay? I understood his game, all right? I understood what this guy was all about. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't have a clue. I mean, yeah, sure, he went to some classes, he took some courses, he graduated PhD, maybe even double PhD, whatever that may be. He told me he had a double PhD in child psychology. I didn't know any better. You know, these days I can research that. There's no such thing as a double PhD in child psychology. But the fact is, I went into him, I saw him, I had a few words with him. And his final diagnosis, okay, after 6 years of hard therapy, he sat me down. He said, Andrew, today's your last day. I said, thank goodness, because I said, thank God. Thank God, because I'm sick of this. And then he kind of came back and he was like, okay, I understand you're sick of it. And I didn't expect it to be like this. He came back and he thought, he's going to tell me sort of what to do and whatnot. And he had his final diagnosis. And this I'm getting a little, my state is changing here because his final diagnosis was not good. His final diagnosis was not well received by me, by my parents, by my family, by my school at the time. And this is something that stayed with me for many years. I've not been able to shake. I've tried to actually gear my whole life's work towards breaking down this final diagnosis. This man, this real professional, I mean, he had diplomas on his wall. He had the books in the bookshelf. He looked the part. He wore a tie. It was tied all the way up. The top button was buttoned. This guy looked and talked like he knew what he was saying. And his final diagnosis, he sat me down, he kicked back, he crossed his legs, then he uncrossed them, set his hands on either side of the chair, and said, Andrew, my final diagnosis is that you have a devilish side. I remember this very, very clearly, as though it was yesterday. I sat there, I breathed 3 times. I said, I'm going to breathe in and out once, and then I'm going to do it 2 more times. So after that first time, I breathed in and out 2 more times. I mean, we never broke eye contact. I'm looking at him. He's looking at me. It's kind of like chicken, a game of chicken. Who's going to flinch first? And he said, you have a devilish side. I said, no, what? That's your diagnosis after all this? I mean, I guess I was, at this point, almost 17 years old. It was right before I moved to New York City. He said, that's the final diagnosis. You have a devilish side, and you got to keep a good, you got to stay on top of it. So I said, cool. And then I left, and that was that. My parents paid $13,000 for the full tuition of the program, which was help your child become a better child. And then I moved to New York and began the process of becoming an adult. My next note on here is not mature, childlike. Because after that event with the child psychologist, I was really, really determined to not do whatever he said. I was determined to give in to that devilish side and to do whatever I felt like doing no matter what happened. And that motivated me to move to New York from Michigan. I grew up in Michigan, but I figured New York City, that's the craziest place to be. That's the most exciting city of all. I mean, that's the place you can go and really get lost or really get into trouble. And that sounds like the kind of trouble I want to have. So I made my way to New York and decided to not go to college. I had been accepted to a couple of schools, well, actually just one school, a school in Chicago for art called the Art Institute, and I went and visited there as well, but I didn't go there, and decided to go to New York because it was a little more crazy, and anyway, my life unfolded, and I became a performer, an entertainer. I did some music, some rock and roll music. As Jesse said, did some television work, and all of that has led to this moment, because this is the most current thing I'm doing. Everything else I've done, but this is what I'm doing. If few minutes ago, I did a little interview for some local broadsheet back in New York, and they were saying, so what are you doing these days? I said, well, I'm doing this. So if there's any questions, if anybody has questions or anything like that, I'm open. We have a few more minutes to take questions from the audience, just something general. You guys are great. Great audience. This is the audience that dreams are made of, right? You can fix your hair for 30 seconds and people just cheer, and I mean, that is heaven for me. That's just golden. I just want to learn. I'm here to learn. I'm here to relax. I'm here to inhale the fine quality air. I mean, thanks again to Jesse and Maximum Fun for setting this up. And this is really incredible. Really, round of applause, guys. And thank you for coming out to this. I'll never forget this, for sure. I could run my mouth, talk about nothing, and just curl my hands through my hair. That's enough. I mean, that is a miracle. Some people work like on assembly lines. Some people are doing like really what we would consider important things, working for very passionate causes. The oil spill. I mean, I was reading that in the Los Angeles Times. The oil spill. There's people there gathering hair clippings from barbershops. Did anybody hear about this? They're using barbershop hair clippings to soak up the oil. Now, I have not washed my hair in 3 years, so my hair is saturated. I'm fully saturated. My hair would not work. It actually would repel the oil, kind of like a magnet. But yet, I get to come here, and you guys claim to enjoy this. Does anybody have any questions about having fun or about Jesse Thorne? I can do my best to answer those as well. Just raise your hand, ask something. Otherwise, I'll keep. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. You fooled him! You did it! All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. He got the job. He listened to some of the music I made before he went into the interview. Very risky decision to make. Depending on the job. He got pumped up. He got amped up, right? He went in with a gleam in his eye or a crazed. I mean, they might have given you the job out of fear. I mean, that's always a possibility. I don't know, this crazy guy came in for an interview. He was all jacked up. I just gave him the job. We'll fire him right after 2 weeks. Now, how long have you had that job now? 14 months. Okay, well, congratulations. Clearly, you did what... Let's leave that there. Okay. And thank you for your kind words. Thank you for listening to the music. I have made some rock and roll music. Very loud guitars, just open hi-hat. Now, the hi-hat is an interesting drum instrument. How many people here are familiar with the hi-hat? Yeah! The hi-hat is two cymbals cushioned together. You've seen the cymbal. It's usually a slight bell shape, okay? There's a round bell top. And then there's another cymbal reversed, put on the bottom end, and then they clink together. And if you squeeze them shut, they go t, 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 t. And if you open them, they go tss, tss, tss. And if you open them and close them at the same time, they go t, tss, 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 tss. And that, my friends, is the classic dance beat that has moved us for so many years. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Will you be tracking down Mr. Penelope and finding out what comedy he's doing now?
Hey, that's a great question. But that, my friend, is a slippery slope. Because if I really dive into school and my high school experience, middle school experience, junior high experience, elementary school experience, my post-high school experience, which was still basically an educational experience, a school experience, even though I wasn't in school, those people are intense characters. And part of me, of course, is curious. Part of me tries to search around on the internet for old friends, old acquaintances, old crushes, okay? And then other part of me wants to actually drive to their house and sort of knock on the door, see what's up. And the third part of me wants to sneak into the bedroom, and that's where I cut it off. That's where I cut it off, because that's not cool. That's just, that's funny for us here today, but that's not a good instinct to follow in the real life. Okay, yes.
What do you think the common thread is? So, music, talking, the TV show. What do you think the common thread is that you bring, or the viewpoint that you have that's making you stand out and making people want to hear what you have to say?
Thank you. I mean, that kind of goes back to, I think, the child psychologist, the devilish side. The devil is at work at all times. And he occasionally infiltrates humans and uses them for devious or potentially enlightening means. I'm not convinced that he's bad. And I'm here today to invite everybody to explore that side of themselves, to give in to that instinct that you've always said no to give in to that part of yourself that you or your parents or some higher power or even society around you, someone told you that's not good. But I'm here to say that's not good or bad. It's whatever you make it. And I guess that's the common thread running through all my work is to try to get you to be in touch with yourself. To try to... Any other questions? I said too much. I said too much. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
I follow you on Twitter, and you seem to have this really joyful, devilish relationship with food. What do you eat in an average day? You tell me a lot about the most fantastic meals I've ever heard of.
Yes, I enjoy food very much. Thank you for taking note of my comments about food. Well, food is a great experience because you get to consume it, right? So that's one of the few things that you can actually eat that you love. I love keyboards, right? I love iPhones. Well, actually, I don't. I prefer the BlackBerry. I take that back. I love handheld devices, okay? I love all kinds of stuff. I love music, but you cannot eat that stuff. But I do love peanut butter, and that is something I can actually eat. So it's sort of an erotic experience in that way. We all go back, I guess, to some form to the oral fixation. You want to stuff your face. You want to use this opening as a channel to pile drive nutrients, proteins and whatnot. You want to stuff your face with stuff you love, okay? So I've tried to eat cassette tapes. I've tried to eat different CDs. It's sharp. It hurts going down. So yeah, I just like to eat food because it tastes good, and those are things I love. I like Dorito, Cheeto, Frito. I like Pringle. I like Taco Bell and Wendy, McDonald's. I mean, these are great treasures. Okay, the amount of work, the amount of effort, the research, the development, the painstaking process of developing some of these snacks for us. For me! You can enjoy a Little Debbie cake, all right? Almost anywhere across the country, you can find one. It's going to be a good price. You probably get a whole box of them for 99 cents if you go to the right place. And you can eat that, and you can be taken to the moon and back. I mean, you can be It's just... Just a free-form guy. I'm just a free spirit. I'm someone who's here in the name of freedom. I've managed to do that thing that so many people have tried to do, and some have. I've been able to do myself. I'm just doing me. This is me. Yes, sir. Douglas. You know, my wife was very smart. She went to the breakfast at 8 a.m. That was a little early for me, I got to admit. I normally do breakfast between 3 and 4 p.m. But the 8 a.m. breakfast, it's novel. It's definitely, there's a novelty to that. You're up at the crack of dawn, there's the rooster and whatnot, eggs and all that. I mean, that's classic. It's just classic. But for me, I'm kind of in that next the 22nd century headspace where you're getting up in the middle of the day. And I noticed that they did have bananas. Is that right? But we did not eat any yet because I usually save my bananas for after a big event. I want to reload after this. I'm going to be spent after this, okay? This is like diarrhea of the mouth. After that, you want to reload with potassium. You get some carbs in there, right? Bananas have starch. They have a lot of sugar, of course. That is when I would eat a banana, after an event. In the morning, it's too soon. It's too soon to get banana breath right off the bat. That's just too much. I normally try to get up after 12 noon, just as a defiant motion against the work ethic, the 9 to 5. I'm just. Whoops. Anyone else? Any questions? We have a few more minutes. I mean, lunch is coming up. Hey, lunch! 12 noon lunch! Noon lunch! 12 lunch, 12 noon lunch, 12 noon lunch, 12 noon lunch. There was this idea, 50 Cent. You guys heard of 50 Cent, right? He said in a book he wrote with Robert Greene called The 50th Law. Robert Greene wrote a book called The 48 Laws of Power. It's a great book if you like to fight. But 50 Cent and Robert Greene teamed up, and they wrote a book. My brother gave it to me for Christmas. And it's basically about fear. But one thing that 50 Cent said that I thought was so poignant was most people are afraid of being themselves. And I gotta say, I wish 50 Cent was here because here's a whole room of people who are not afraid of being themselves. Give it up. Here's it. You ever notice people who kind of fix their shirt? I mean, here's some observation. You seen people that they get up and they do that? How many people have seen a girl while she's walking away from you go like this? At the end of the day, life, it just keeps going. And it's been a little crazy for me. I'm fortunate to have had a crazy experience. We're all here trying to add some craziness to our lives, and that's good. We want to spice them up a little bit. We want to keep it interesting. I would like us all to stay focused on that feeling of joy. And that's really why I'm here. I'm here because Jesse has been a supporter of that joy and all that he's done. He has recognized that quality in what I've done, even if it hasn't been that obvious to other people. I'm here in the name of joy, in that sensation. whatever it may be, and that we can align ourselves with that feeling, that quality that exists within all of us at all times. And we want to stay connected to it. We want to fight for it. We want to preserve it. But mainly we want to create it. And as many of you here who are audience members, you're also creators of joy. We can all go home after this experience here this weekend. We can all walk away with having had more joy and having had the capacity, the instruction to create more joy. And that's all I want to say is to keep that going, because whether you do it through music or through talking or through movies or radio or TV or writing or books or whatever it is, the human beings, we have this ability to do that, to create joy, to latch on to things that feel good and recognize them and give them respect and give them our energy. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. I want to latch on to joy. I want to get that feeling going. I've been very depressed a lot of my life. I've been very angry, been very shy and very scared of the world around me. And the only way I found to combat that, to strike against that feeling, is to stay around joy. There's music that does it for me. There's lots of things that do it for me. And I imagine everybody here has something that does it for them. And that's why we're here today, to encourage each other, to support each other, to stay connected to that feeling of joy. That as the world progresses and we find ourselves challenged by more and more intense situations, more and more intense atmosphere, that yet that is even more of a reason to stay connected to that joy, because it's an endless source of power. It's almost perpetual in that way. It's like an energy source that will not die. Because all I have to do is think about a song I love, or a person I love, or a movie, a scene in a movie that makes me laugh. That keeps me connected to joy. And that's why I'm here. I want to be part of that. And thanks to all of you for also believing in that feeling of joy, and for being here today to participate in it. It's time for lunch now.